Greetings, fellow beings of the Unity Galaxy. I am Commander Veltran, and I have served in military capacities across 17 different star systems. Today, I tell you a story that serves as both warning and testament: never hire human mercenaries. There is always a reason they come to your door, and it is never what they claim. The tale I recount took place in the Uzar system, a proud monarchical realm that had maintained its independence for over 3 centuries. Princess Endova, second heir to the Uzarian throne, possessed all the ambition of her bloodline, but none of the patience required for proper succession. Her elder brother Prince Maxar was beloved by the people and respected by the nobility, 2 qualities that made him an obstacle to Endova's burning desire for power. The Unity Galaxy was fractured into countless petty kingdoms, each jealously guarding their territories and trade routes. Communication between systems was limited to the jump points that connected our scattered worlds, and military technology varied wildly from one realm to another. It was in this environment of isolation and disparity that human mercenaries had carved out their reputation. Humans, those curious bipedal creatures from the Sol system, had emerged as the galaxy's most feared soldiers for hire. Their handheld rocket launchers could punch through the thickest armor, plating their marksmen could place shots with terrifying precision across impossible distances, and their cybernetic augmentations allowed them to operate in conditions that would kill most other species. But their true weapon was their unpredictability, where other mercenaries were content to fight for payment, and humans seemed to possess an insatiable hunger for something more. Princess Endova learned of the humans' reputation during a diplomatic visit to the Kresh Confederation, where she witnessed firsthand the aftermath of a consulting contract they had fulfilled. The Kresh had hired a company of human mercenaries to quell a mining rebellion on their frontier worlds. The humans had not only crushed the uprising, but had somehow managed to acquire mining rights, refining facilities, and exclusive trading agreements with 3 neighboring systems. The Kresh leaders spoke of the humans with a mixture of awe and barely concealed terror. "They did exactly what we asked," the Kresh administrator had told her. "But they also did so much more." The seed of an idea took root in Endova's mind. If humans could reshape entire systems while fulfilling their contracts, perhaps they could help her claim her rightful place as Empress of Uzar. She spent months researching human military companies, eventually settling on Titan Solutions, a mid-sized outfit with an impressive record, and more importantly, a reputation for discretion. The initial contact was made through carefully veiled communications. Endova presented herself as a concerned patriot, seeking to defend Uzar against potential external threats. She spoke of the need for military advisors and specialized equipment to modernize Uzarian defenses. Dr. Harrison Blake, Titan Solutions' lead negotiator, listened with the polite attention of a professional who had heard such proposals countless times before. Dr. Blake was a deceptively mild-mannered human, with gray hair and gentle eyes that concealed a mind like a steel trap. He spoke multiple galactic languages fluently, and possessed an encyclopedic knowledge of interstellar law, military doctrine, and political maneuvering. During their negotiations, he asked probing questions about Uzar's political structure, resource distribution, and potential sources of internal conflict. "Princess Endova," he said during one of their encrypted communications, "Titan Solutions prides itself on complete transparency with our clients. Our services extend beyond simple military consultation. We believe in creating lasting solutions to complex problems. However, such comprehensive assistance requires a level of access and authority that goes beyond a standard consulting contract." Endova felt her pulse quicken. What kind of access? Unrestricted movement throughout Uzarian space, access to all military installations and personnel records, and most importantly, the authority to make tactical decisions in real time without waiting for approval from the Crown. The princess hesitated. What Dr. Blake described sounded almost like a military occupation, but her desire for the throne burned fierce enough to override any concerns about sovereignty. "That can be arranged," she replied. The contract they eventually signed was a masterpiece of legal misdirection. On the surface, it appeared to be a standard military advisory agreement, with performance bonuses tied to the successful resolution of internal security threats. The language was sufficiently vague that it could be interpreted multiple ways, and buried deep in the subsections were clauses that would have horrified any legal expert had they been given the chance to review them. Prince Maxar, meanwhile, remained blissfully unaware of his sister's machinations. He was busy with his own duties, managing trade negotiations with the Kaloran Empire, and overseeing the construction of new defensive installations along Uzar's border with the lawless Void territories. His focus on statecraft and genuine concern for Uzarian welfare made him a popular figure among both nobles and commoners. The first sign that Princess Endova had made a catastrophic error in judgment came when the advance team from Titan Solutions arrived in the Uzar system. She had expected a few dozen advisors and some equipment. Instead, 3 massive transport vessels emerged from the jump point, escorted by 2 heavily armed frigates that bore no national markings. The ships requested permission to land at the primary military installation on Uzar Prime, the capital world. When ground control inquired about the cargo manifest, the response was simply classified under sections 12 through 18 of the advisory contract. Endova watched the landing from her private observation deck, her excitement mounting as the transport ships disgorged their contents. Hundreds of human personnel in unmarked combat gear filed out in perfect formation. Behind them came equipment she had never seen before. Walking battlesuits that towered over their human operators' vehicles, that hovered without visible propulsion, and crates upon crates of weapons and technology. But her excitement turned to unease when she realized that the humans were not merely unloading, they were setting up a permanent installation. Prefabricated structures rose with alarming speed. Defensive perimeters were established, and guard towers appeared at strategic points around the landing zone. Within days, what had been an empty section of the military base had become a heavily fortified compound that looked more like a forward operating base than an advisory mission. Dr. Blake requested a private meeting with Princess Endova in the newly constructed human facilities. The interior was stark and efficient, filled with banks of computers, communications equipment, and holographic displays showing detailed maps of Uzarian space. The princess felt increasingly small and out of place among the humming machinery and the silent, watchful humans who staffed every station. Princess Dr. Blake began settling into a chair across from her. "I trust the initial deployment meets with your approval. However, I feel I should brief you on some of the tactical realities we've discovered during our preliminary assessment of Uzarian military capabilities." Endova nodded, trying to project confidence she no longer felt. "Please proceed." "Your conventional forces are adequate for maintaining internal order. However, they are woefully unprepared for the kind of coordinated assault that would be necessary to remove an entrenched political opponent." Dr. Blake's words hung in the air like a blade. Fortunately, Titan Solutions specializes in exactly these sorts of scenarios. "I'm not sure I understand," Endova said, though she was beginning to understand all too clearly. "Princess, we are here to ensure your success. That means identifying and neutralizing any threats to your authority. Your brother, admirable though he may be, represents just such a threat." The blood drained from Endova's face. She had wanted the humans to level the playing field, to give her an advantage in the inevitable power struggle with her brother. She had never explicitly asked them to kill him. "Dr. Blake, I never said—" "You didn't need to," he interrupted gently. "The contract is quite clear about our objectives. We are to ensure the stability and security of the rightful ruler of Uzar. Our intelligence suggests that ruler is you." Over the following weeks, the human presence on Uzar expanded like a malignant growth. They conducted training exercises with Uzarian forces that were clearly intelligence-gathering operations. Human technical specialists began appearing in government facilities ostensibly to upgrade security systems, but actually to install surveillance equipment and backdoors into critical systems. The humans also began their own peculiar form of diplomacy with Usarian society. They offered advanced medical treatments to injured soldiers, provided technical assistance to civilian infrastructure projects, and even helped local farmers improve crop yields using alien agricultural techniques. These seemingly beneficial acts served to make the human presence seem less threatening to the general population, while simultaneously creating dependencies that would be difficult to remove. Prince Maxar began to notice the changes. Reports reached him of human personnel in areas where they had no obvious business. Questions arose about weapon shipments that didn't appear on any official manifests. Most troubling were the accounts from his own security staff about being politely but firmly excluded from certain areas of the palace complex. When he confronted his sister about these irregularities, Endova attempted to deflect his concerns. "The humans are here at my invitation," she said. "They're helping to modernize our defenses against external threats." "What external threats, Endova?" "We've had peace with our neighbors for decades. And why wasn't I consulted about this contract? As heir to the throne, I have the authority to make such decisions in the interests of realm security." Maxar's eyes narrowed. "Your second heir sister. I am Crown Prince and will be until Father passes the crown to me or decides otherwise. Any military contracts of this magnitude should have my approval." That night, Prince Maxar met secretly with several members of the Noble Council, the body of aristocrats who advised the crown on matters of state. What he learned filled him with dread. The humans had been cultivating relationships with individual council members, offering them exclusive trade deals, advanced technology, and other incentives to support what they termed progressive leadership. Lord Valen, one of the oldest and most conservative members of the council, summarized the situation with grim clarity. "Your Highness, I fear your sister has signed a pact with devils. These humans make promises that sound beneficial, but there are always prices to be paid that weren't mentioned in the original negotiations." Prince Maxar decided to confront Dr. Blake directly. He arranged a meeting at the human compound, bringing with him the palace's chief security officer and a representative from the Noble Council as witnesses. The humans received them with perfect courtesy, offering refreshments and pleasant conversation before getting down to business. "Dr. Blake," Prince Maxar began, "I have concerns about the scope of your operations here. They seem to extend well beyond the advisory role outlined in my sister's contract." Dr. Blake smiled that mild, gentle smile that never reached his eyes. "Your Highness, I understand your concerns. Perhaps there has been some miscommunication about our mandate. Princess Endova has authorized us to take whatever steps are necessary to ensure the long-term stability and security of Uzar." "And what exactly does that entail?" "Comprehensive reform, Your Highness. Military modernization, governmental efficiency improvements, resource optimization, and the elimination of destabilizing influences." The way he emphasized those last words made their meaning unmistakably clear. Prince Maxar felt ice form in his stomach. "Dr. Blake, I am the rightful heir to the throne of Uzar. Any reforms that affect the succession or governmental structure require my approval." "Your Highness," Dr. Blake replied, his voice maintaining its polite tone. "I'm afraid that's not quite accurate. According to our legal analysis of Usarian succession law, there are several provisions that could affect the line of inheritance. Civil unrest, incompetence, or actions against the realm's best interests could all justify a change in succession." "Are you threatening me?" "Not at all, Your Highness. I'm simply helping you understand the legal realities of your situation. Titan Solutions has a vested interest in ensuring that Uzar has strong, decisive leadership. Princess Endova has demonstrated the vision and determination necessary to lead Uzar into a new era of prosperity." Prince Maxar stood his companions, following suit. "This meeting is over, Dr. Blake. I want your people off Usarian soil within 48 hours. Dr. Blake's smile finally faltered. I'm afraid that's not possible, Your Highness. Our contract with Princess Endova has several years remaining, and there are substantial penalties for early termination. Perhaps it would be better for everyone if you found ways to work with the new realities instead of against them. The prince left the compound, knowing he was walking into a war he was ill-equipped to fight. The humans had spent months preparing their position, subverting his supporters, and creating a web of dependencies and obligations that made them nearly impossible to dislodge. But he also knew that accepting their presence meant accepting his own political elimination. Over the next several days, Prince Maxar attempted to rally opposition to the human presence. He called emergency sessions of the Noble Council, sent encrypted communications to military commanders, and even reached out to allied kingdoms in other systems. What he discovered was that the humans had anticipated all of these moves. Several key council members had apparently entered into private agreements with Titan Solutions that made opposing the humans financially ruinous. Military commanders reported that their forces had become dependent on human-supplied equipment and technology that would cease to function if the humans decided to withdraw support. Even worse, attempts to communicate with outside systems revealed that the humans had somehow gained control of several jump point monitoring stations, giving them the ability to intercept and selectively block interstellar communications. Princess Endova, meanwhile, was beginning to understand the true extent of what she had unleashed. The humans no longer bothered to maintain the pretense that they were simply advisors. Dr. Blake's weekly briefings had evolved into what amounted to orders politely phrased, but backed by the implicit threat of force. Princess Dr. Blake explained during one such briefing, "We've identified several inefficiencies in Usarian resource allocation. Our economic specialists recommend immediate nationalization of the rare earth mining operations and a restructuring of trade agreements with the Caloran Empire. Those mining operations have been controlled by noble families for generations," Endova protested. "And our trade relationship with the Calorans is crucial to our economic stability. Which is precisely why these changes are necessary. The noble families lack the technical expertise to properly exploit these resources, and the Caloran trade deals are heavily skewed against Usarian interests. We've prepared new agreements that will be far more beneficial to the Crown." Endova realized with dawning horror that the humans weren't asking for her approval. They were informing her of decisions that had already been made. "Dr. Blake, I am still the Princess of Uzar. These are matters for the Crown to decide." "Of course, Princess. And when you become Empress, you'll have the authority to implement these necessary reforms. Until then, we're simply preparing the groundwork for a smooth transition." The word "when" hit Endova like a physical blow. Not if she became Empress, but when. The humans weren't waiting for natural succession or political maneuvering. They were planning to make it happen with or without her consent. That night, Princess Endova made a decision that would have been unthinkable weeks earlier. She contacted her brother through a channel she hoped the humans hadn't yet compromised a servant who had been with the royal family for decades and whose loyalty was beyond question. The message she sent was brief: "We need to talk. The garden, midnight." Prince Maxar met his sister in the palace's ancient rose garden, a place they had played as children, and which now seemed to represent a simpler, more innocent time. Endova looked haggard, her usual composure cracked by the weight of what she had done. "Brother," she began, her voice barely above a whisper, "I've made a terrible mistake." "I know," he replied simply. "The question is, can we fix it?" "I don't think so. They've taken everything. The military answers to them now. The Noble Council is too compromised to resist, and they've made it clear that you won't survive to inherit the throne." Prince Maxar nodded grimly. "I've made preparations. Not all of our people have been corrupted. There are still loyalists and the military members of the nobility who see what's happening. We have options." "What options?" "They have technology we can't match, resources we can't compete with, and they've had months to prepare. Sister, the one thing they haven't accounted for is something uniquely Usarian. They've studied our government, our military, our economy, but they don't understand our people. Over the following day, Prince Maxar put his desperate plan into motion. Using a network of loyal servants, minor nobles, and junior military officers, he began spreading a very specific message throughout the capital city and military installations. The humans were planning to dissolve the monarchy entirely and install a puppet government. This wasn't entirely a lie. Through careful analysis of the humans' actions and demands, it was clear that their long-term plan involved fundamental changes to Usarian society that would leave the traditional monarchy powerless. The message struck a chord with a population that had revered the royal family for centuries. What Prince Maxar was counting on was something the humans, for all their meticulous planning, had overlooked: Usarian cultural pride. The people of Uzar weren't just loyal to the crown because of law or tradition. They were proud of their independence, their history, and their way of life. The idea that foreign mercenaries would dictate their future was anathema to everything they believed. The first signs of unrest began in the outer districts of the capital. Citizens gathered in public squares, not in organized protest, but in spontaneous demonstrations of support for the royal family. These gatherings grew larger and more vocal as news spread of the humans' true intentions. Dr. Blake, monitoring the situation from the human compound, was not particularly concerned. Minor civil unrest, he reported to his superiors. Nothing our security forces can't handle. But the unrest wasn't minor, and it wasn't limited to civilians. Military units that had been cooperating with the humans began reporting equipment failures and communication difficulties. Supply lines developed mysterious bottlenecks. Administrative systems experienced cascading technical problems. The humans found themselves facing something they hadn't anticipated: passive resistance on a massive scale. It wasn't armed rebellion. The Usarians were too smart to engage in direct confrontation with superior technology. Instead, it was a systematic non-cooperation that threatened to bring the entire government to a halt. Dr. Blake called an emergency meeting with both royal siblings. The setting was the throne room, a vast chamber that had witnessed centuries of Usarian history. The doctor stood before the empty throne, flanked by armed human guards, while the prince and princess were positioned like defendants in their own palace. "Your Highnesses." Dr. Blake began his polite facade, finally wearing thin. "This civil disobedience must cease immediately. Titan Solutions has invested considerable resources in ensuring Usarian stability, and we will not allow our efforts to be undermined by romantic notions of independence." Prince Maxar stepped forward. "Dr. Blake, what we're seeing isn't romantic nostalgia. It's the recognition that you and your people represent an existential threat to everything we are. You've come here as mercenaries, but you've revealed yourselves as conquerors. Conquerors hardly. We're bringing Uzar into the modern era. Your technology is centuries behind standard galactic norms. Your government is inefficient. Your economy is stagnant. We're offering solutions to all of these problems." "At the cost of our sovereignty," Princess Endova interjected, finally finding her voice. "Dr. Blake, I hired you to help me claim the throne, not to destroy it." Dr. Blake turned to her with something that might have been disappointment. "Princess, you hired us to solve your political problems. We're doing exactly that. The throne of Uzar will be stronger than ever under proper management." "Whose management?" Prince Maxar demanded. "Yours." "Uzar will have complete autonomy within the sphere of influence established by our contract. You'll find it's a very generous arrangement. Princess Endova will be Empress. You'll be repurposed to a role more suited to your talents, and Uzar will enjoy the benefits of human protection and technological advancement." The word "repurposed" hung in the air like a death sentence. Prince Maxar realized that this was his last chance to act. The humans had revealed their true intentions, and any further delay would only allow them to consolidate their position. "Dr. Blake," he said, "I reject your proposal entirely. As Crown Prince of Uzar, I order you and your forces to depart our system immediately. Dr. Blake sighed. Your Highness, I had hoped we could resolve this amicably. Unfortunately, your order carries no weight. As of this morning, the Noble Council voted to declare you mentally unfit for succession, due to your obvious inability to accept necessary reforms. Princess Endova is now the sole heir to the throne. Endova's face went white. I never agreed to that vote. Half the council members weren't even present. The vote was conducted according to Uzarian law, Dr. Blake replied smoothly. Electronic participation was permitted due to the security situation. I have the records if you'd care to review them. Prince Maxar realized they had reached the end of all possibility for peaceful resolution. The humans had systematically dismantled every legal and political avenue for resistance. All that remained was the one option he had hoped to avoid. That afternoon, as the sun began to set over the capital city, Prince Maxar activated a plan he had spent weeks preparing. Hidden throughout the palace and military installations were small groups of absolutely loyal soldiers, men and women who had served the royal family for years and who could be trusted above all else. The signal went out through a communication network the humans didn't know existed, an old emergency system built into the palace's architecture itself, using fiber optic cables hidden within the decorative molding and stonework. Within minutes, Loyalist forces were moving to secure critical positions throughout the capital. The humans, despite their technological advantages, had made a crucial error. They had become confident in their control of communications, transportation, and command structures. They had not expected a coordinated assault using methods that predated their arrival. The first sign of trouble came when human patrols began reporting that they were being shadowed by armed Uzarians, who made no hostile moves, but clearly weren't there by coincidence. Communications with outlying installations became intermittent, then ceased entirely. The humans began to realize that their careful network of surveillance and control had somehow been compromised. Dr. Blake, monitoring the situation from the command center in the human compound, watched with growing alarm as red indicators appeared across his tactical displays. Status report, he demanded. A technician looked up from her console. Sir, we're seeing coordinated movement of unauthorized personnel throughout the capital. Multiple communication nodes are experiencing simultaneous failures. It appears to be some kind of organized resistance. That's impossible. Our intelligence indicated no such capability among the Uzarian forces. Sir, I'm reading large gatherings of civilians around key government buildings. They're not armed, but they're effectively blocking access to anyone trying to enter or leave. Dr. Blake stared at the displays, finally beginning to understand the scope of what was happening. The humans had spent months preparing for every contingency they could imagine, except for one. They had planned for military resistance, political opposition, and economic warfare. They had not planned for an entire population deciding to simply refuse to cooperate. In the throne room, Prince Maxar was addressing a hastily assembled group of senior military officers, loyal nobles, and civilian leaders. My friends, he began, the time for negotiation has passed. The humans have made their intentions clear. They don't want to work with us. They want to replace us. Lord Valen spoke up. Your Highness, what exactly are you proposing? Their technology is far superior to ours. Direct confrontation would be suicide. I'm not proposing direct confrontation. I'm proposing something far more powerful. I'm proposing that we make their position untenable by making it impossible for them to govern. General Thorne, an old soldier who had served 3 generations of the royal family, understood immediately. A resistance network. Make them fight for every order, every resource, every day they try to stay here. Exactly. They need our cooperation to run this kingdom. Without it, they'll have conquered nothing but empty buildings and hostile population. Princess Endova, who had been silent throughout this exchange, finally spoke. Brother, there's something you need to know. The humans. They're not just planning to rule Uzar. I've seen their data files. This is a test case. They're using us to develop techniques they plan to use elsewhere." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. This wasn't just about Uzar, it was about establishing a template for human expansion throughout the galaxy. Prince Maxar nodded grimly. "Then we're not just fighting for ourselves. We're fighting for every independent world the humans plan to modernize next." Over the next several hours, as night fell across the capital, the situation escalated rapidly. Human forces found themselves unable to move without encountering spontaneous demonstrators who politely but firmly blocked their path. Supply convoys discovered that every route to their destinations had been rendered impassable by crowds of concerned citizens. Electronic systems throughout the city began experiencing cascading failures as maintenance workers decided that this was an inopportune time to provide service. Dr. Blake made one final attempt to reassert control. He ordered his forces to forcibly clear the streets around key government buildings and arrested what he believed to be the ringleaders of the resistance movement. But for every leader arrested, 2 more appeared. For every street cleared, 3 more were blocked. More disturbing from the humans' perspective was the discovery that their own technological advantages were being systematically neutralized. Communication systems that had worked perfectly for months suddenly became unreliable. Vehicles developed mysterious mechanical problems. Even the weapon systems in the human compound experienced intermittent malfunctions. What the humans didn't realize was that for months, while they had been establishing their control networks, Uzarian engineers and technicians had been studying human technology with remarkable determination. Every piece of equipment they had been allowed to service, every system they had been brought in to repair, had been secretly analyzed and reverse-engineered. Dr. Blake finally understood the full extent of his miscalculation when he tried to contact Titan Solutions headquarters to request reinforcements. The communication array, which had been functioning perfectly that morning, now produced only static. A technician informed him that the quantum resonance chamber that powered their faster-than-light communications had apparently suffered a catastrophic malfunction. Repair would require components that were unfortunately manufactured only on the human homeworld. "Sir," the technician added quietly, "I also need to inform you that we're detecting anomalous readings from several of our defensive systems. It's possible that some of the Uzarian maintenance staff may have introduced modifications to our equipment." Dr. Blake stared at the man. "Are you telling me they've sabotaged our own technology?" "It appears so, sir. The modifications are elegant. Whoever did this understands our systems better than we thought possible." As dawn broke over the capital, Dr. Blake faced an impossible situation. His forces were effectively under siege in their own installations. His communications were severed, his equipment was unreliable, and the population he was supposed to be controlling had demonstrated that they would rather see their kingdom destroyed than submit to foreign rule. A messenger arrived under a flag of truce carrying a personal letter from Prince Maxar. Dr. Blake read it with growing recognition of his position. "Dr. Blake, you have demonstrated that human military technology is indeed superior to ours. You have also demonstrated that superior technology means nothing without the consent of the governed. Titan Solutions is welcome to remain on Uzar as guests and advisors under terms to be negotiated by a legitimate Uzarian government. Any other arrangement is no longer acceptable. You have 24 hours to consider this offer." Dr. Blake crumpled the letter and looked around the command center. His staff waited for orders, but what orders could he give? They could fight their way out of the compound, but where would they go? Their ships had been surrounded by thousands of Uzarian civilians who weren't threatening violence but were making it clear that any attempt to leave would be complicated. He could order his forces to fire on civilians, but that would mean abandoning any pretense of legitimacy and turning this into a war of extermination. Even if they won such a war, ruling over the ruins of a devastated world would hardly fulfill Titan Solutions' objectives. More importantly, Dr. Blake began to understand that the Uzarians had outmaneuvered him completely. They had allowed the humans to believe they were in control, while secretly preparing for exactly this scenario. The humans had superior technology, but the Usarians had superior knowledge of their own world, their own people, and their own systems. As the 24-hour deadline approached, Dr. Blake made a decision that would be studied in military academies across the galaxy for generations to come. He requested a personal meeting with both Prince Maxar and Princess Endova. The meeting took place in the same throne room where Dr. Blake had attempted to dictate terms just days earlier. This time, however, the balance of power was dramatically different. The human doctor stood alone, flanked not by guards, but by empty space. The royal siblings sat in chairs placed before the throne, representing a united front for the first time since the crisis began. "Your Highnesses," Dr. Blake began. "I find myself in an unusual position. Titan Solutions has never failed to complete a contract, and I'm reluctant to establish that precedent now." Prince Maxar spoke first. "Dr. Blake, the contract you signed was based on false premises. You were hired to provide military consultation, not to overthrow our government." "Perhaps there was some ambiguity in our initial agreement," Dr. Blake conceded. "However, the letter of the contract still stands. Princess Endova engaged our services to secure her position as ruler of Uzar." Endova leaned forward. "Dr. Blake, I engaged your services because I wanted to protect my kingdom. What you've done is place it in greater danger than it's ever faced. Princess, with respect, Uzar's isolation and technological stagnation made it vulnerable to any number of external threats. Our presence has eliminated those vulnerabilities." "By making you the external threat," Prince Maxar interjected. "Dr. Blake, you've demonstrated something very important to us. You've shown us that Uzar cannot survive in the modern galaxy without change. But that change must come from within, guided by Uzarian values and interests." Dr. Blake studied the two siblings, recognizing something he hadn't expected: maturity. Both the prince and princess had learned from this crisis, had grown beyond their original positions. "What exactly are you proposing?" he asked. "A new contract," Endova said. "A genuine advisory role. Your people provide technical assistance training and expertise. In exchange, you receive payment trading rights and the gratitude of a grateful ally." But Prince Maxar added, "Under Usarian command, following Usarian law, with full respect for our sovereignty." Dr. Blake considered this carefully. The alternative was a costly and ultimately pointless war that would leave Uzar in ruins and Titan Solutions with nothing to show for their investment. The revised arrangement would still provide profits and establish a human presence in the Uzar system, just not the complete control they had originally envisioned. "There would need to be safeguards," he said finally. "Guarantees that our personnel and equipment would be protected, that our contracts would be honored, that our trade rights would be respected." "Of course," Prince Maxar agreed. "But those safeguards would be mutual. We want guarantees that human presence will not threaten Usarian independence, that our sovereignty will be respected, and that any technology you provide will not create dependencies that could be used against us." The negotiations continued for hours, hammering out details that would reshape the relationship between humans and Usarians. In the end, they reached an agreement that gave the humans significant economic opportunities and a strategic foothold in the system, while guaranteeing Usarian political independence and cultural autonomy. Princess Endova formally renounced any claim to immediate succession, acknowledging that her actions had demonstrated poor judgment that needed to be rectified before she could be trusted with power. Prince Maxar, meanwhile, agreed to implement the technological and economic reforms that were genuinely needed, but at a pace and in a manner consistent with Usarian values. Dr. Blake departed 3 days later, along with most of the Titan Solutions military contingent. A small staff remained to oversee the implementation of the new accords and to serve as liaison between the two peoples. As the human ships disappeared into the jump point, Prince Maxar stood with his sister on the palace balcony, watching the last of the foreign forces leave their world. "Do you think they'll be back?" Endova asked. "Oh, they'll be back," Maxar replied. "But when they return, it will be as partners, not conquerors." "And what about other systems, other kingdoms that might face the same situation?" Prince Maxar was quiet for a moment. "We'll share what we've learned. The galaxy needs to know that humans can be dealt with, but only if you understand what you're really negotiating for." Word of what had happened on Uzar spread throughout the Unity Galaxy with surprising speed. The story took on different forms depending on who told it, but the core message remained consistent. Human mercenaries were dangerous, not because of their technology or military prowess, but because of their ambitions. Other kingdoms began reviewing their own contracts with human military companies, looking for the same subtle clauses and hidden implications that had nearly cost Uzar its independence. Some terminated their agreements immediately. Others renegotiated under terms that better protected their sovereignty. The humans, for their part, found their reputation fundamentally changed. They were still feared for their military capabilities, but they were no longer seen as invincible. The Uzarian resistance had demonstrated that superior technology could be overcome by superior understanding of local conditions and local will. Titan Solutions adapted to the new reality, shifting their business model to focus more on genuine cooperation and less on political manipulation. Dr. Blake, in a private moment of reflection, admitted to a colleague that the Uzarian experience had taught him something important about the limits of power. "We assumed that because we could control their technology, we could control their society," he said. "What we learned is that a society's true strength lies not in its tools, but in its people." Years later, when historians wrote about the Uzarian crisis, they focused on different aspects of the story depending on their perspective. Military historians emphasized the tactical innovations of the Uzarian resistance. Political scholars analyzed the legal and diplomatic maneuvers that had led to the peaceful resolution. Sociologists examined the role of cultural identity in maintaining political independence. But for those of us who lived through those events, who watched a proud kingdom nearly lose itself to foreign ambition, only to emerge stronger than before, the lesson was simpler and more profound. Never hire human mercenaries. Not because they won't fulfill their contracts, they will, and more besides. The danger lies in discovering too late that what you thought you were buying and what they thought they were selling were two entirely different things. The humans come not merely as soldiers for hire, but as agents of change that few societies are prepared to handle. They bring with them not just weapons and technology, but ideas about governance efficiency and progress that can fundamentally alter the character of a civilization. If you must deal with humans, do so as the Uzarians learned to do in the end, as equals negotiating with equals, with full understanding of what each party truly wants and full respect for what each party cannot surrender. The galaxy is vast, and there are many ways to gain power. But the price of power seized through others' strength is often higher than anyone imagines when the first payments are made. The throne gained through foreign intervention is never quite as secure as the throne defended by one's own people. This is the story of why you should never hire human mercenaries, and why Princess Endova learned that some bargains once made can reshape not just kingdoms, but the very nature of what it means to rule. The human ships had departed, but their legacy remained in the form of a transformed Uzar, stronger, for having faced the crisis, wiser, for having learned from it, and forever changed by the realization that in the modern galaxy, independence must be continuously earned and vigilantly defended. And in systems throughout the Unity Galaxy, rulers and advisors pause to reconsider their own arrangements with human military companies, asking themselves the crucial question: in this bargain we're making, who exactly is the client, and who is the beneficiary? For in the end, the humans had taught Uzar the most valuable lesson of all, that true security comes not from the strength of one's hired allies, but from the unshakable resolve of one's own people to remain free.